turning horror into hope for survivors. That is Gisele Pelicot's wish as her memoir is released, recounting her life, including, of course, her terrifying story of rape and abuse, in her own words. Titled A Hymn for Life in English, the book retraces the mass rape case that turned Pelicot into a global symbol in the fight against sexual violence and victim blaming and pushed France into overhauling its rape laws. In the book, the 73-year-old explains her decision to waive her right to anonymity and describes how she learned that her husband had been drugging and raping her for years, including the moment when police showed her images of herself unconscious in bed being raped by dozens of unknown men. In addition to her now ex-husband, 50 men were convicted of sexually assaulting Gisele Pelicot in a landmark trial in December of 2024. Now, ahead of the book's release, Ms. Pelicot spoke to the German broadcaster ZDF.
I take stock of my life and explain how I'm trying to rebuild myself on this field of ruins. And it's true that all the warning signs I didn't know how to recognize, I explain them in the book. You should know that I went through 10 years of therapeutic wandering, during which I underwent general anesthesia, and that's also why I had no memories. Thankfully, I don't have those memories, because I think I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today if I did.
We can now speak to Britta Sandberg. She's a journalist for the German magazine Der Spiegel, and as their France correspondent, covered the Pelicot trial in Avignon. Britta, great to have you on the show. You followed the case closely, of course. Now you've not only read her book, you also had the chance to sit down with Madame Pelicot in Paris. Who is Gisele Pelicot today? How is she?
She seems to be kind of relieved now because, the trial is over. All of the 51 men had been convicted, so this was success for her, and this wasn't clear from the very beginning. And now she's like not that tired as I have seen her at the end in the last weeks of Avignon, the trial of Avignon. And I think for her to write this book was a very decisive step because she never told her own story, her own views, how she experienced the trial, how she lived all these days. From November 2020 on, when she learned about what her husband was doing to her. And now you hear her and can read her for the first time. And I think she had the feeling that she told me a lot of articles I read about my case. It was like if it wasn't me they were writing about. And now she is kind of gaining control again about her story.
Yeah, so she's owning her story for the first time throughout this entire ordeal. You have followed this since the story broke, basically. What have you learned through the book that you didn't know about the case before, about her before?
The book, and I think this is the smart decision they did about the book, is not only telling the story of the trial, the whole procedure, the cooperation with her lawyers, how they prepared her for the trial. It's also about her life. And very early she decided that she didn't want to do a book just about the trial. She wanted to tell also all these women who had been applauding her and had been there and had followed the trial all over the world. She wanted to tell who is Gisele Pelicot. So there are whole chapters about her childhood, about her youth, about the relationship with Dominique Pelicot, about the death of her mother, which was very decisive, and I think a very decisive factor for her resilience, for the resilience she showed in this trial, because her mother died when she was just 9 years old, and she promised herself never to be as sad as she had been at that time because her father got depressive, her brother. She calls herself the only survivor of this family.
Oh. She was celebrated, you hinted at it there, for her bravery by women, not only in Avignon, but around the world. But there were also those who questioned her accounts, who blamed her despite overwhelming and shocking, frankly, evidence. Let's listen to her in an interview with German broadcaster ZDF.
My lawyers told me, be careful. If you oppose a closed trial, you'll have to watch the videos. And that's when I watched some of them, accompanied by one of my lawyers who was on a video call. I didn't watch all of them, but those I did see were truly unbearable and intolerable.
unbearable and intolerable scenes that were played in the courtroom, and still the defense tried to discredit her, to blame her. Did she really succeed in making shame change sides, as she famously set out to do?
I think it's starting to change sides, because this isn't anything which comes from one day to another. But there had been several examples of trials in France where victims of rape just speak out now. They dare to go public. And I think there is a change in attitude, that the victims don't feel responsible and don't feel ashamed. And she once again spoke in the interview I did with her from this double pain of having been raped and feel ashamed for that, because she said herself she took showers for hours, and for months she took hour-long showers, just like in the effort to get away all this dust and dirt the man left on her body, as she told me. So I think there's a real change in attitude, and then there had been little changes in legislation. It's the start of a change, and as it has been worldwide, I think this is very decisive. And if you look at Me Too discussions in France before, none of these Me Too discussions before, from actors and cases about Gérard Depardieu, had changed such a lot of things. So this is really decisive, I think.
How has it affected how sexual violence is treated by the judicial system in France, and maybe even beyond?
There was a change in the law that defines rape. That the consent of women is much more important and much more clearly defined in this law now. So it's easier to punish the man who had been raping. And there's another thing also concerning what the French call chemical submission. So if you give substances that women will be like under how to say can't act anymore, like she felt like asleep. She told me it was like undergo a surgery. She didn't remember any of these rapes. By the way, I mean she saw the videos afterwards, but she didn't have the feeling of the man touching her body. And I think there is a new sensitivity towards the fact, and she's trying to do it with her daughter also, that if women are coming to the police or to doctors or to hospitals, that they do have that in mind, that some symptoms can correspond to what they call chemical submission and this given drugs to make them helpless. And I think this is another important step. And there will be little steps. And now she's starting with her tour also of lectures worldwide. And it's amazing because a lot of very prominent actresses are willing to read her book, like Emma Thompson did the audiobook in Great Britain. Kate Winslet will read in London. So there will be another movement of solidarity of women with Gisèle Pelicot with the outcome of the book.
Yeah, just to give our viewers some context, because you mentioned Madame Pelicot's daughter there. She also believes she was abused by her father, but she doesn't have the kind of proof that her mother had to ultimately bring Dominique Pelicot to court. I want to play another bit of Gisèle Pelicot's recent ZDF interview.
I was sacrificed on the altar of vice. When you see these individuals come fully aware to rape an unconscious woman, it's difficult. Those images were unbearable.
Now, dozens of men from all walks of life saw no problem in raping an obviously unconscious woman. In some of the videos, she was snoring loudly. Many of them in the trial argued that they thought she was in on it, or that to them her husband's consent was enough. They argued that they had no understanding of the fact that what they were doing was in fact rape. That points, doesn't it, to a very dangerous lack of education about women's rights and sexuality. You mentioned the law surrounding consent being changed, but is anything being done to address this?
I mean, it's difficult to change consciousness in men's minds. So Now, these were the bad moments of the trial. And she said in the interview I did with her that these first 2 weeks were the most difficult for her, because she heard all these false excuses or no excuses, and all these men saying, no, but her husband said it's okay, so for me it was okay, and no, she didn't. I saw that she did not move, but I thought she would wake up later on and then participate. And it was really very hard to listen to that, even for us in the public. I think all these men thought that they would kind of get out of it, and now they have all been sentenced. And perhaps it's not the one trial which will change the world, but perhaps the fact that they had all received prison sentences and up to 20 years or 15 years for those, Dominique Pelicot got 20 years. I mean, this is also a signal, and there had been other sentences afterwards, which, in my opinion, have been more severe than they would have been before.
That was Spiegel correspondent Britta Sandberg. Many thanks for your insights. Thanks so much for being on the show today.